This report brought to you by the Richmond Club, where investors and high-growth companies meet.
Hello everyone, my name is James Saperstein. I'm very happy to be here to present AzurRx to all of you. Thanks for your attention and agreeing to listen to our presentation today. Our first slide is really a company disclaimer. As you know, we're a publicly traded company. We're on NASDAQ, so you'll be hearing some things here today which may or may not be in other presentations, so keep that in mind. Let me just go through the investment highlights. So for those of you who are following along, we're on slide number 3. We are a publicly traded company which really in the GI space. We're targeting cystic fibrosis and chronic pancreatitis patients. We have a product called MS-1819, which is a recombinant lipase treatment for exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI, as we like to call it. We're addressing a very large global market in excess of $2.3 billion. And we really are a substitute for what is porcine pancreatic enzyme replacement therapy, or PERTs. We are made from yeast enzymes, and we are here to replace the pork problem that we have with some of these enzymes. There is a shortage of pork around the world, but also there's antigenicity associated with pork problems, and we are going to bring in the first alternative. What I like to talk about in my past, and I'll talk about my career in a second, but I started out with Eli Lilly, and back in 1984, we launched the very first product, human insulin, which was competing against insulin that had been around for 80, 90 years, pork insulin and beef insulin. At that time, there was the argument, well, why bother? Why bother with human insulin? Well, now, fast forward 30-something years, we are 99.9% of the market is human insulin, because why would you want to use an animal-based product with all its antigenicity, all those genetic issues that come along with it, when you're going to have humanized product? And for AzurRx, MS-1819 will be the very first humanized product on the market, and that's what we have. We've established proof of concept in chronic pancreatitis already. I'll talk to that in our further slides. We also have 2 studies in cystic fibrosis. One has been completed in our phase 2B in September of 2019. We are in the middle of one, a combination study right now, and we are about to initiate another one. We have a very good team with established track record. Let me introduce the team that's on the next slide. We have Martin Cruson that does our corporate communications and our investor relations strategy, and basically our chief operating officer. We have Dan Schneiderman, who came to us in January. He's our new CFO. Dan has extensive experience in the biotech arena. Our chief medical officer is Jim Pennington. I've known Jim a very long time, well over 30 odd years. I knew him when he was a professor at the Harvard Medical School, infectious diseases, but Jim shifted over and started working in cystic fibrosis over 30 years ago. He came to AzurRx a couple of years ago from a company called Anthera and has extensive experience in cystic fibrosis, and is one of the true pioneers and clinical development leaders in our field. Myself, 37 years in the industry, as I mentioned, Eli Lilly before, then Hoffman LaRoche, Bristol Myers Squibb, and been part of Big Pharma for 17 years in a lot of different types of programs and jobs, and ranging from sales, marketing, commercialization, licensing. And then I became a bit of a turnaround artist. I went to a company that no one had ever heard of at the time called Gilead Sciences. Many of you have heard of it now. It's the top biotech company in the world. But when I joined them, Gilead was not in great shape. They had failed at the FDA with their flagship product at the time, Adesivir. My job was to put Gilead on the map in terms of HIV and bring people back to the company who didn't want to work with the company. So I was in charge of the global launch of their flagship product at the time, Viriad, and then helped to structure the deal for what became Truvada. I left there to go another turnaround situation called Serono. Serono, I became the general manager in the United States and turned that business around, going from 26th in business unit contribution of 29 companies to number 1 in the world for Serono. Then I started venturing out and starting my own companies. The first company I founded was Tobir Therapeutics. We eventually sold it to Allergan for $1.7 billion, and then got involved in a couple of other turnarounds, Aliqua, which we turned around and sold a piece of it to Celgene. Likewise, joining AzurRx this past October, we had a situation where the stock was really not performing very well. I replaced the founding CEO who moved on to another good opportunity for himself. And sometimes you need to bring in a different mechanic to fix the company. So we're well on our way. We fixed the balance sheet. We've got capital in the company. Our clinical studies are coming along nicely, and we've hit every single milestone. So I'm pretty proud of the work that the team has done. Moving on to the next slide. Here you see exocrine pancreatic insufficiency for those who are following along. So we have two clear indications that we're going for. One is cystic fibrosis, where we have 30,000 patients in the United States alone. It's really more of a Western society indication. You'll see a lot of patients in the US, you'll see a lot of patients in Western Europe, you won't see a lot of patients around the world. That's where chronic pancreatitis comes in. It's a huge, although it's small, about 90,000 patients in the United States, but huge outside the United States, especially in Asia, where you see a lot of pancreatitis that comes from cancer, that comes from alcoholism, that comes from hepatitis infections. So we truly have a couple of shots on goal, which are imperative for a small company like ours. So when you look at the market, which is the next slide, the main two players in the market are Creon, which is a product that is manufactured and sold by AbbVie, which is a very large pharmaceutical company. And the second largest product is Zempep. Zempep used to be part of Allergan. For those of you who watch acquisitions, AbbVie just acquired Allergan earlier this year, although the transaction hasn't been closed yet. And basically, Allergan had to divest of Zempep. So Nestle, which is it's the chocolate company Nestle in Europe, has purchased Zempep for its nutrient division. Zempep sells about $230 million in the United States and a lot more elsewhere. And Creon, which is AbbVie's product, is well over $1 billion in sales in the United States. This market is what we call the branded generic. It's very hard for generic drugs to make it into the marketplace. The level of safety and efficacy to reach that is a very high ground to reach, because basically what they take is pigs, they take their pancreases, they grind them up, they put them in these pellets and put them in capsules, and patients take anywhere from 40 to 48 capsules a day with their meals and with their snacks. What we're going to have is a yeast-derived, humanized regenerative medicine where we're going to put in Entera capsules, which I'll talk about that in a minute, and compete against it. So it's a much more natural product. We're not depending on the pig population. For those of you who are watching what's going on, at least in the United States, there's shortages in pigs, there's shortages in China. China, believe it or not, is going through a swine flu epidemic again, and that's going to increase the cost of some of these products. So we're really not dependent on that and can keep our drug costs down. So the marketplace, if you look at slide number 7, again, it's a multi-billion-dollar market. We expect that we could reach revenue streams of $400 to $500 million with our market share, and it's pretty much untapped. We're going to be the first product in the humanized space. So going to the next slide, we really believe MS-1819 will fulfill an unmet need. Again, it's recombinant. We're more stable. We don't have a limited supply chain. Our pill burden, which I did not talk about, is far less than the 40 to 48 that are currently being used. In fact, our pill burden is more to 8 to 16 pills per day. Still a lot. I'm a pharmacist. I can tell you compliance is a big issue. So think about it. How many of these kids, especially the kids with cystic fibrosis, they have pulmonary issues and other things. They don't like taking these many medications. So anything that we can cut down for them will improve their outcomes. So we're really excited by that as well. You see also, I should state on this slide, you see the amount of slides, the amount of capsules. Not only are our capsules less in quantity, but our capsules are a lot smaller. So from a compliance issue, it's a big plus for us. Moving forward, this is what our clinical trial programs look like. I won't spend a lot of time on this because I have a couple of other slides that show you, but we do have our first study, which was done in chronic pancreatitis, that was done for 11 patients in France, Austria, and New Zealand. That showed that we had efficacy. Our dose at that time was 2.2 grams. So we proved safety and efficacy in pancreatitis, and then we bridged over to cystic fibrosis. Now, what happened in our first trial in phase 2B? The FDA only allowed us to do a dose of 2.2 grams. Why? Because these are cystic fibrosis patients, and the FDA is very concerned about their safety. So, you see, that was called a phase 2 option 1 study. It was 32 patients. We did 2.2, and when we presented those results in September 2019, our share price dropped. Why? Because there was a little bit of confusion. What we showed is that on the intent to treat, we had a CFA of 56% versus the PERTs that we compared ourselves to of 86%. Now, the market looked at that as a negative. We saw that as a positive because what that shows is that the drug was underdosed at 2.2 grams and we still had a positive CFA. So this is basically like a proof of concept. Even at a low dose, we achieved almost what the PERTs achieved. So we saw that as a very positive connotation, but people that are unsophisticated confuse the data. What's important here is that the PERTs have 3 different enzymes, one of them being a lipase and a protease, and we showed because our something called a coefficient of nitrogen absorption of CNA, which was very high compared to the PERTs in the study, we don't need a protease in order to get the results. And that is very, very significant. So going to the next slide, which is slide 11, what did we learn? We learned 2.2 grams is safe. We went to the FDA. The FDA now, in the study we're starting in 2020, is allowing us to go to 4.4 grams. However, we're also going into something called an enteric-coated capsule. And I'll demonstrate what that means in a second. So we're very confident we're going to get very, very good activity. Why is the enteric-coated capsule important? Next slide, 12. Because we know that the drug is best absorbed in a higher pH, meaning in the stomach, when we delivered that drug, half the drug, the 2.2 grams, was chewed up in a low pH in the stomach. So we need to make sure that stomach gets to the smaller intestine, or the duodenum, as we call it. Although in Canada it might be duodenum, but we say duodenum. And if we can preserve the drug in the duodenum for a longer period of time, we'll get better absorption. And we're confident that's going to get us much better CFAs and much better CNAs. And we are also doubling the dose at 4.4. So we're starting that study very, very soon. Stay tuned. There'll be a press release on that. The FDA just gave us an approval to get that started, and we're confident we're going to get some terrific results. So we like to call this slide 13, which is our staircase slide. This is really our whole clinical development program. You can see where the plus sign is here to the right of the slide. This is where we are right now in the middle of phase 2B, both with the monotherapy trial. We also have what's called the combination trial, which is ongoing right now in Europe. And that trial is taking our drug, adding it to a PERT for patients who are failing on PERT. And we have so far several patients who have completed that trial. The pandemic has slowed a few things down, but we're still on target to make our timeline. So as soon as Europe opens up, we'll finish that trial. And we've seen outstanding results. We're very, very excited. We'll have top-line data on that hopefully this summer and definitely by the end of this year. So look for those are very big interim results that we'll get out to our investors this year. And that's really what brought me to AzurRx is I saw those trial results, at least an inkling of it before I joined, and I was very excited, and I think you will be as well. Intellectual property. We're covered through September 2028. We have the Hatch-Waxman law in the FDA, which allows us to get an extension for 5 years to 2033. We also are regenerative medicine, and we're technically a biological. So the FDA grants an additional 12 years of exclusivity. So that should take us well past 2033. And the EMA for biologicals also gives us an extra 10 years. So IP is not a problem. We have 2 indications. It's really exciting. We also have this enteric-coated capsule that I mentioned before, and there's also an opportunity possibly to file for IP extension on that, which will give us another year and a half. Moving on, we have a lot of analyst coverage. If you look at slide 15, we just put out a new research paper by Argus Research. Dawson, we have several banks, Dawson James, H.C. Wainwright, the Maxim Group, Roth Capital. We haven't even done financings with these banks except for H.C. Wainwright, but yet the analysts think enough about our stock to do our coverage. So the price targets range anywhere from $2 to $8 at this point, but that's up to them to recommend that. That's not anything we give, but we certainly know and understand that we're undervalued at this point. So, financial overview of the company. We were founded in 2014. The company did an IPO in 2016. Our NASDAQ ticker is AzurRx. Our market cap right now, currently today, is $21 million. 2 days ago, we were at $16 million. When I joined, we were at $12 million. We're starting to do better. As you see, things are starting to ankle up a little bit, slowly but surely. We have 27 million shares outstanding. We have some warrants that are out there that we're busy trying to clean up, but that brings us to a fully diluted 44 million shares. Our current stock price today, as I do this presentation, is 78 cents. Hopefully, it will keep climbing once all of you get in. I should say, by the way, too, we also have a lot of liquidity in our stock. We trade normally between 200,000 to 300,000 shares a day on NASDAQ. So, in conclusion, why should you invest in the company? We have this recombinant lipase technology that's going to compete against really two main competitors, which are inferior. I can't say it any other way. They're porcine based. Now, are we going to launch this on our own? No, we're going to seek a partner to do that and launch against these large companies because we'll have a superior product. Who knows? They may acquire us themselves. We are addressing the global market. I believe this is a clear unmet need for us. We have very, very strong IP. As I mentioned before, we're pursuing two indications in chronic pancreatitis and CF, cystic fibrosis in monotherapy. And the third one eventually will be combination therapy in cystic fibrosis. So not one, not two, but 3 shots on goal with one product, which we already know is safe and effective. This is going to be an easy lift. This is not an oncology product that makes it to phase 3 and fails. This is a product that we know works. And as far as the team, we have an established track record. Several of us have had exits, so we brought some good return on investments to our investors, and I'm hoping that you become an investor as well. Thank you very much for listening. This is James Saperstein at AzurRx, AzurRx on NASDAQ. Have a great day.
If you enjoyed this video, please let us know. You've been watching the Richmond Club Report. If you've just come across this channel, please feel free to like and subscribe. I'm sure you'll find a lot of interesting and lucrative investment and trading ideas around here. We'll see you again soon on the next video. Cheers, guys. Have an amazing and profitable day.